press conference on Operation Sindoor. Like yesterday, we'll have the opening statements by the three senior officers who are here with me. You all know them well now. However, for those who were not here yesterday, let me introduce you to them. In the middle, we have Air Marshal A.K. Bharti, Director General Air Operations, who will provide insights on the air domain. To his right is Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, Director General Military Operations. He will cover the land aspects. And to my immediate right is Vice Admiral A.N. Pramod, the Director General Naval Operations. Following these briefings, we will be having a few question and answers. May I now request the DG Air Operations to commence the proceedings.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, we had a detailed brief on the successful joint operations that were carried out to destroy the terror infrastructure in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as well as in Pakistan itself. We also iterated that our fight was with terrorists and their support infrastructure and not with Pakistan military. However, it is a pity that the Pakistan military chose to intervene and bat for the terrorist, which compelled us to respond in kind. दोस्तों, हमारी लड़ाई आतंकवाद और आतंकवादियों के खिलाफ थी। इसलिए 7 मई को हमने केवल आतंकवादी ठिकानों पर ही हमला किया था। पर अफसोस इस बात का है कि पाकिस्तानी सेना ने आतंकवादियों का साथ देना उचित समझा और इस लड़ाई को अपनी लड़ाई बना ली। इस परिस्थिति में हमारी जवाबी कार्यवाही अत्यंत आवश्यक थी और इसमें उनका जो भी नुकसान हुआ, वे खुद इसके लिए जिम्मेदार हैं। हमारी तरफ से हमारी एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम्स देश के लिए दीवार की तरह खड़ी थी और इसको भेदना दुश्मन के लिए नामुमकिन था। This brings me to the point, how have Indian forces managed to minimize the damage to both civilian and military infra in the country in spite of the unrelenting efforts by the Pakistani forces? Most of you and the majority populace within the country have had a lot to say about the layered and integrated air defense systems put in place by the Indian Armed Forces, which includes the assets of the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, in addition to the primary air defense assets of the Indian Air Force. As you all are well aware, this robust AD system comprises of a large variety of multi-layered AD sensors and weapon systems, from point defense weapons like the low-level air defense guns, shoulder-fired manpads, and short-range surface-to-air missiles or SAMs, to area defense weapons like the air defense fighters and longer-range surface-to-air missiles within our inventory. Additionally, the numerous waves of drones and unmanned combat aerial vehicles employed by Pakistan were also thwarted by the indigenously developed soft and hard kill counter-US systems and the well-trained Indian air defense personnel. All this was brought together as an efficient and effective AD environment by the Integrated Air Command and Control System, or the ISCCS of the Indian Air Force, which accords us the net-centric operational capability which is vital to modern days war fighting. While much has been said and written about the newer systems, I would like to place on record the performance and efficacy demonstrated by even the older battle-proven AD systems like the Pechora, the OSA AK, and the LLAD guns in countering the Pakistani threat vectors in the current operations. They were all modern generations, but these battle-proven systems stood the test of time and took them on head-on. Another highlight has been the stellar performance of the indigenous air defense weapon system like the Akash system. Here, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to mention that putting together an operationalization of this potent AD environment has been possible over the last decade due to unwavering budgetary and policy support provided by the Government of India in acquiring state-of-the-art equipment and weapon systems. Some of the results achieved in countering the enemy threat vectors over the last week are now being shown on the screen. Shown on the screen is the probable enemy PL-15 missile, which is of Chinese origin. This missile has missed its target, and you can see the pieces now which are available with us. Another weapon system or weapon which was found was the long-range rocket, the pieces of which you can now see on the screen. We have talked about the loiter munitions and the unmanned aerial systems, and here are some of the glimpses of those systems which we have brought down. To your right, with the right undercarriage or the wheel you can see is the Yeeha system, which is of Chinese origin with Pakistan. You can see some quadcopters and you can see one odd Sonka drone hanging by the wire. All these have been brought down by our trained crew and air defense systems. As far as our offensive actions are concerned, yesterday I had already shared some details about the targets engaged by the Indian Air Force. The composite picture of the Indian Air Force targeting so far is now shown on the screen. As you can see, we have targeted the length and breadth of the adversary. I'm sure most of you would have already seen the effect of these strikes on ground, courtesy the large number of videos and photographs being circulated in the media. A few representative examples from the open source are now being shown to you on the screen. In fact, two of them. This is the strike on the Noor Khan Air Base. And you can see the effect. I'm sure most of you have seen the video. I have also picked it up from your sources only. And this is the aftermath of our strike at Rahim Khan Air Base. You can see the massive crater that it has left on its runway. And you can see the pinpoint accuracy of our weapons. So with that, giving you an overview of how our air defense systems have thwarted the enemy drones, their fighter aircraft, their missiles, and resulted in minimal losses on our side. I would now hand over to the DGMO to cover his portion.
धन्यवाद एयर मार्शल भारती। मैं आज आप सब के साथ भारतीय सेना के एयर डिफेंस मेजर्स जो कि हमने इंडियन एयरफोर्स के साथ मिलजुल कर तालमेल में लिए, उसके बारे में कुछ बातचीत करूंगा। इस विषय में मैंने कल भी कुछ टिप्पणी करी थी, लेकिन आज मैं इस युद्ध के अहम एस्पेक्ट के बारे में आपको थोड़ा और पर्सपेक्टिव देना चाहता हूं। हमें एयर डिफेंस ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के एयर डिफेंस की कार्रवाई को एक कॉन्टेक्स्ट में समझने की आवश्यकता है। मैंने आपको कल बताया था कि पिछले कुछ सालों में आतंक की गतिविधियों का कैरेक्टर जो है उसमें कुछ बदलाव आ रहा था। अब हमारी मिलिट्री के साथ साथ मासूम सिविलियंस जो कि अपना बचाव करने में विफल थे, उन पर भी हमले हो रहे थे। 2024 में जम्मू सेक्टर में शिवखोरी मंदिर को जाते हुए यात्री और इस साल अप्रैल में पहलगाम में मासूम पर्यटक इस खतरनाक ट्रेंड के विशेष उदाहरण हैं। पहलगाम तक पाप का ये घड़ा भर चुका था। उसके बाद जो हुआ उसके बारे में हम कल विस्तार में बातचीत कर चुके हैं। क्योंकि आतंकियों पर हमारे सटीक हमले लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल और इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्री को पार करे बिना किए गए थे, हमें पूरा अंदेशा था कि पाकिस्तान का वार भी बॉर्डर के उस पार से ही होगा। इसलिए हमने अपनी एयर डिफेंस की पूरी तैयारी पहले से ही कर ली थी। हमारी इन्वेंट्री में शामिल काउंटर मैन्ड एरियल सिस्टम्स, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक वॉरफेयर के साधन और एयर डिफेंस वेपन्स का इंडियन एयरफोर्स के इसी प्रकार के सिस्टम्स के साथ एक अनोखा मिश्रण किया गया। इसलिए आपने देखा कि जब जब पाकिस्तान एयरफोर्स ने हमारे एयरफील्ड्स और लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस में 9 और 10 मई की रात को लगातार हमले किए, वो इस मजबूत एयर डिफेंस ग्रिड के सामने विफल हो गए। आपके सामने इस ग्रिड को एक तरीके से दर्शाया गया है। आप देख रहे हैं कि इंटरनेशनल बाउंड्री से कितनी लेयर्स, रडार्स, काउंटर अनमैन्ड एरियल सिस्टम्स, उसके पीछे शोल्डर फायर्ड वेपन्स, हमारे विंटेज एयर डिफेंस वेपन्स जो कि काफ़ी सालों से हमारी सेना में हैं। एयर मार्शल भारती ने भी उसके बारे में बात करी। और लास्ट में हमारे मॉडर्न एयर डिफेंस वेपन सिस्टम्स। तो कोई मौका नहीं था कि पाकिस्तान एयरफोर्स ये मल्टी टियर डिफेंस को पार करके पीछे हमारी एयरफील्ड्स या लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस को टारगेट कर पाए। ये जो डायग्राम आप अपने सामने देख रहे हैं, ये मुझे एक इंसिडेंट की याद दिला रहा है। और मैं आपको इस उदाहरण के जरिए से एक ये एस्पेक्ट हाईलाइट करना चाहता हूं। जब मैं स्कूल में था तो तकरीबन मेरे ख्याल से ये 70 का दशक था और उस समय इंग्लैंड और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच में, आज शायद क्रिकेट की बात भी करनी चाहिए क्योंकि मैं देख रहा था कि विराट कोहली ने टेस्ट क्रिकेट से रिटायरमेंट ले ली। कई भारतीयों की तरह वो मेरे भी फेवरेट क्रिकेटर हैं। तो 70 के दशक में ऑस्ट्रेलिया और इंग्लैंड की फेमस एशेज सीरीज चल रही थी और उस समय ऑस्ट्रेलिया के दो बहुत तेज गेंदबाज जो कि क्रिकेट हिस्ट्री में बड़ा उनका नाम है, जेफ थॉमसन और डेनिस लिली, उन्होंने अंग्रेजी बैट्समैन और उनकी बैटिंग लाइनअप को तहस नहस कर दिया था। और ऑस्ट्रेलियंस ने उस समय एक कहावत निकाली थी, दैट फ्रॉम एशेज टू एशेज एंड फ्रॉम डस्ट टू डस्ट, इफ थॉमो डोंट गेट हियर देन लिली श्योरली मस्ट। और अगर आप इस लेयर को देखें तो आप समझ जाएंगे कि मैं आपको क्या बताने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं। तो अगर आप सारे सिस्टम्स को पार कर भी गए तो आपको फिर भी एयरफील्ड या लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशन या जो भी चीज को आप टारगेट कर रहे हैं उसमें पहुंचने से पहले कोई ना कोई इस लेयर्ड ग्रिड का सिस्टम जरूर गिरा देगा। जो दुर्दशा कल आपने पाकिस्तान एयरफील्ड्स की देखी और शायद आज भी एयर मार्शल भारती की प्रेजेंटेशन में।
Ladies and gentlemen, if Thompson will not get you, then Lily will. I don't think so. There can be a better cricketing analogy of the mess that the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force have made of Pakistan, and more importantly of all the incoming drones from that useless country that came into and across the Indian border, were taken down with such emphatic force that the enemy had absolutely no idea what hit it, and then came the offensive nature of this very strong bowling lineup that the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy put up. These are the shots that you are seeing of the equipment that was used by the networks, the network centric air defense that was set up by the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy to safeguard the western frontier from our adversary. This has had a wonderful impact on Indian equities. I will request now the PCI to please fire the long term chart of the Nifty as also the intraday chart. Almost at day's high, 24,902 is what we have seen as the high point of the day. This 3.6% is the highest intraday move since February 2021. Remember, those were COVID times and the base was really low. So, a 3.2% move over 8,000 points is not as significant as the 866 point move over 24,000 points where the Nifty was yesterday. Now, let us look at how the defense stocks have done. They are trending across the board, and you have a very, very strong move coming into stocks such as Zen Technologies, the maker of drones, something that was so successfully used against Pakistan overnight, 5 percentage points higher. BEML 4.6% higher. BEML, Bharat Electronics Earth Movers Limited, is one of the defense plays that India has, and it is in the manufacture of a lot of defense equipment which we do not see but works at the back end. BEL, as is there on the screen, 2.2% higher. Bharat Dynamics, the maker of missiles, the maker of artillery shells which were used to such devastating impact, is 2.4% higher. Midhani, that is Mishra Dhatu Limited, the company that makes special alloys that make the tips of missiles, the tips of artillery shells, is 3.5% higher. And of course, you have smart moves coming into Cochin Shipyard, Garden Reach Shipyard. These are companies that make the aggressive destroyers, the aggressive missile ships, and of course, they also build aircraft carriers. This is what is happening right there in front of you. And of course, this very, very sharp rally that you see in the IT space today. Remember, a lot of positives have come together. Among them, apart from the comprehensive victory that Indian military scored over Pakistan, is the US and China trade deal that has happened a couple of hours ago, in which both the US and China have reduced punitive tariffs against each other's export to their respective countries. That has added a risk on element on Indian IT. Now, you would want to understand why Indian IT is so well placed today when the trade deal is between US and China. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest market for domestic Indian IT is the US market. About 70 to 90% of Indian software exports go to the US and are billed in dollars. Now, if recessionary fears in the US are receding, that means that domestic US companies will spend more on IT, and that is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, the IT index, which is the top performer today, up almost 7%. When was the last time you saw 2300 points, 2400 points being added on a single index? All mid-cap IT stocks are up as they present a very, very attractive picture even on dividend yield. Look at TCS, 4.5% higher, 3,610. Even at this level, ladies and gentlemen, TCS has a dividend yield of 3.74% because of huge cash on its balance sheet, because of its debt free status, and the fact that this is a billion dollar company, a multi billion dollar company, India's second highest company in terms of market capitalization, which has fallen dramatically over the last so many months and weeks, and is now showing signs of a swing trade on the long side. You have HCL Tech, you have Infosys, you have many other companies that are doing a very fine job as far as markets are concerned. I am just wondering if we have our guest, Mr. Nilesh Shah, was to join us on trade today, and so was Mr. Kunal Rambhia to join us. PCR is okay. Kunal is with us. Namaste, Kunalji. A very warm welcome. With your permission, I'll start with Jai Hind and Jai Bharat. You're looking fresh and young and eager to go. Now, tell us your view on the Nifty. 24,900 is with us at a fresh 6-month high, actually a 7-month high. The last time we saw these prices, it was October 21, 2024. Your view on the markets as of now?
Good afternoon, Shell sir. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And Jai Bharat, 100%, that's the best day to actually begin with after all the stresses are now gone. Coming back to sir, Nifty and Bank Nifty, Nifty is absolutely trending, and this is what we were discussing last week also, that there is a clear breakout at 23,900, 800 kind of levels, and we saw the retesting of the same level on Friday, and today is a trend continuation. And if you look at the highs, yes, we have surpassed those highs of December also, where Nifty made the top near 24,800. So I think now the next resistance is near 25,500, and that can be a potential target for now. So buy on dip can be a good strategy. In fact, the counters which are just picking up the momentum can be the counters to watch out for next 1 month to 1.5 months. And as far as Bank Nifty is concerned, support remains at 55,000 levels, and the target can be 56,000 to 56,500.
Okay. Specific stocks which you see now moving into higher momentum within the Nifty or anywhere else, what are your charts telling you?
Certainly, sir, the counters which you already highlighted just now in the discussion, first is Infosys and TCS, because these two are the IT counters which we discussed right near the low on our channel also. These counters are showing extreme momentum, good trending on the weekly chart. So I think with the stop of around 1600, Infosys can still be bought. The targets can be 1720. Similarly goes with TCS. I think trending, still trending, but not as strong as Infosys. I think this counter is heading for a fresh breakout at 3620. So above 3620 with the stop of 3575 to 3580. One can initiate a buy. Targets can be 13900. Adani Green is also looking equally good, which we discussed previous week. I think range breakout is now likely with the stop of 930. One can initiate a buy. Targets can be 975, and above that, targets can be 1100. So these are a couple of counters to watch out for now.
Okay. That's the view that is coming in. What looks good in the banking sector, Kunal? Would you have a view on Axis Bank?
Absolutely. So again, we discussed about other counters, but Axis was pending even last week. If you look at the spot Axis Bank chart, counter was consolidating for quite a long time, and today it's showing that falling channel breakout, and this breakout was placed at around 1190. Counter is now trading at 1200. I think this is a fresh breakout with the stop loss of around 1185. One can go long. The first target can be the swing high, which is 1240, which is a short-term target. Positionally can be the previous high, which is 1275. I think this counter can lead the rally in private banking sector now.
Okay. Kunal, your very quick view on defense stocks. They've added a fresh bout of momentum in their lives. Which are the one or two stocks on the defense space that is looking good?
Sir, only two counters which we discussed on our channel earlier also. First is HCL, which is trading at 4450 right now. It's not an immediate fresh breakout. Actually, it's a trending counter, but near to the support right now. So with the stop of around 4375, one can initiate a buy. Even on decline, this counter can be added. And the targets can be the previous high, which are 5400. And the second, which I like the most, is Mesgaon Dock. I'm personally, a fan of this counter because of curve formation. This counter is right now trading at 29.1015. I think with the stop of 28.75, this counter can also be bought. Targets can be 3,200. Again, one should not be keeping in mind this event which has occurred, but otherwise these counters are absolutely trending counters. Buy on dip can be good opportunity.
Okay, so this is the view that is coming in on banking, defense, and IT. Kunal, we've had a downtick on pharma mainly because of this impending US executive order on cutting down pharma costs in the world's largest market for pharmaceuticals and drugs. Even the pharma index was down 2.5% in the morning. It is now up. What are the charts of Sun Pharma telling you?
Sir, I was on the Sun Pharma chart itself, and I was about to tell you this is the only counter which I track in entire sector. March 2025 bottom 1600. See the bottom again on 7th April 1620, and today's bottom is again 1623. Exactly on the same bottom, and the counter is absolutely trending on the weekly chart. It is available. It was in the morning, in fact, available at that mouth-watering level. So, positional stop on this view on this entire chart is 1600. Buy on dip can be good opportunity if someone wants to play momentum. Can buy at this present also level. The stop loss can be 1650 for momentum trading. Targets can be 1715 and 1800.
Okay, let me just look at the broader markets as of now. Again, a fresh intraday high, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is a characteristic of a trend day. I'll request the PCR to kindly show the Nifty chart. We opened gap up, and such was the momentum that that 300-point gap up has actually now added another 600 points, and we are now at day's high. So this was told to you before the markets opened that there was this possibility of a trending uptick today, and that has worked out beautifully well. Let me just mark some movers and shakers as far as the Nifty is concerned, and then we'll look at something more important as far as prices are concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, the advanced decline ratio of the Nifty is 47:3. Only 3 stocks are down. The top contributing stock for the long side is Infosys, 120 points, ICICI Bank 110 points, HDFC Bank 79 points, 54 points by Reliance, and 50 points by TCS. What is pulling the Nifty lower is Sun Pharma, IndusInd Bank, and of course Divi's Lab. So nothing to be worried about as far as prices are concerned, but let's get into a more important discussion, the reason for which the markets are rising so far. Joining us on the show is Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor at Business Today Television and Business Today, to discuss this very, very important second briefing by the Indian Armed Forces on how and they were able to take out the entire defense network of Pakistan and then hit them back very strongly. A very warm welcome to you, Siddharth.
Thanks, Shel.
What are the 2 or 3 major things that you added to your armory after hearing this briefing?
Well, very clearly, and while we can talk about the US-China ceasefire, which in trade ceasefire is equally important for the markets, but as you said, what really is transpiring as far as this second briefing that's happening from the Director Generals of the 3 wings of the armed forces, some more new points and layers coming out. One, that air defense system in Karachi, which is the only major naval port of consequence really for Pakistan, very, very strategic, that was taken out. Between yesterday's briefing and this is one of the more important details that has come out. The second is a clear declaration of readiness at all our air bases by the Director General of the Air Operations, who has been explaining also that no Indian air bases were hit. So that's also very, very important. The third bit I would say is that the broader messaging that emerges from this press conference and other statements is that while we have ceased fire after achieving some of the objectives or most of the objectives that were set out at the beginning of Operation Sindoor, the Indian armed forces maintain a complete state of readiness, a frontal posture for a quick action if it were to be required. And finally, Shell, I think the most important statement that we have to take into context with regard to Pakistani terror and its constant support for jihad is that we have now said as a matter of policy that any terror incident will be taken as an act of war. This was said at the time when the ceasefire was announced, and therefore we are putting Pakistan on notice for the long term that if there is any further terror activity, India will treat it as an act of war, which by the way we didn't say up right after Pahalgam and through the days of Operation Sindoor. So that's also a very, very significant shift in our stance. Our viewers are more perhaps familiar with shift in monetary stance, but this shift in our military doctrine is equally important. And I think, Shail, as you were covering, defense stocks and other stocks that are associated with the overall defense of the realm, also perhaps reflecting some of that optimism and that confidence. There you can see it, the Nifty India Defense Index, Shell, well in the green.
Yes. What we'll do, yes, these are the stocks, Siddharth, I wanted to gain your attention with. Look at BEML, look at BDL. These are two companies which have been directly impacted and impacted positively because of Akash Tir and of course Midhani, which is Mishra Dhatu Nigam Limited. All these three companies work together on many common projects, which is arming missiles, firstly making them, which is BEL, the maker of Akash Tir, and then Mishra Dhatu Nigam Limited, which provides special alloys that go into these missile tips for them to survive a huge amount of heat, as also BDL, the maker of all artillery shells, which are now used by the Indian Army and of course the other defense units. What you see are also radars, which are early warning ones, especially weapon locators, whose absence was terribly felt during the Kargil war. So all those have worked very, very well. But for our viewers, if you can put into context the entire sequence of events and their political and military message. This war started in Kashmir. Was it about Kashmir or was it about something else?
Well, clearly the terror strike that you are referring to happened in Pahalgam at a tourist spot, and innocent tourists, all of them mostly Hindu barring one, and that had a spillover effect. What has happened as a consequence of the ceasefire? We spoke about defense stocks. We have also lifted the airspace restrictions that were in place for several days now, right from Leh down to Gujarat. Almost 32 airports which are now getting back into operations, and that clearly will also have an impact on normal commerce, travel, and I would dare say to some extent eventually as far as tourism is also concerned, particularly in Kashmir. So a major sign, major signal towards normalcy with India lifting all its airspace restrictions across these states from up north right down till the west in Gujarat. So that's pretty significant in terms of normalization, even as we retain our stance. You asked me about this timeline, but really I would say, what have we achieved? We have clearly said that Kashmir, which Pakistan believes is an issue, is well and truly a matter that was dealt with in 2019 with the revocation and abrogation of Article 370. That was perhaps the only unfinished business as far as India was concerned. That played out 6 years back. Kashmir is not on the agenda, regardless of what the US president may choose to tweet about. What have we done? Like I said, there is a shift in stance. As you know, in monetary terms, the shift in stance is sometimes accommodative, It is sometimes becomes restrictive, really, and that impacts how rates are set.
Let's use another turn.
Yes.
It's a market pivot.
It's a clear pivot. And what is the pivot? The pivot is, in the future, if there is an act of terror, that will be treated as an act of war, which therefore means that India's actions, response in military terms, will obviously, perhaps if nothing else, be the equal of what has been done. When did you last, even in the 71 conflict, and Kargil was a limited engagement in, in comparison, did you see the ability of India's Air Force to strike practically every inch of Pakistan? So, that's the, air power has also fundamentally shifted and evolved over those 5 decades plus, but our reach, our depth and technical capability. One last point. If you want to understand the actions, it first started with a strike on terrorist infrastructure, which was primarily buildings of various kinds. The second level response was air defense systems. And the third level response from India, spread out over these 3 days more or less, was air bases. So, if you want to understand what India did, we kind of first had a very limited strike, but as Pakistan chose to escalate matters, we kept sort of going up the ladder. It stopped, but if it were to happen again, obviously, you can yourself imagine what is the possible likely kind of level that we will engage at in the future. So, in summation, I think it's very, very clear that this ceasefire is on India's terms, and at Pakistan's request. It leaves us with a lot of elbow room, the shift in stance to respond to future developments, as the monetary authority says that it is always in readiness to change that. Similarly, depending on how inflation would play out, so depending on how Pakistan will behave and how it will rein in its terror complex, its jihad-e complex, we will respond equally. I think that's sort of the broader message that we can take away from the developments so far.
So that 2 points. Now, as you have pointed out, that there is normalization of the situation. Bazaars have opened across from western Gujarat upwards to northern Kashmir. Air traffic on the civilian side is being restored. I'll request the PCR to kindly fire the chart of Indigo to see how it's reacted to this change. The underlying thing is that the ceasefire is temporary. Now, what happens if Pakistan breaks it? Do we again restart the circle of dialing back the markets, dialing back the civilian traffic? How do you see it from now on?
All ceasefires are tenuous. It's very difficult to predict them. If you see, as far as recent conflicts are concerned, maintaining the peace is pretty difficult. Even after the ceasefire was announced, there have been provocations from the Pakistani side, and I think broadly the key takeaway would be that we are kind of responding in a far more mature, confident manner, because clearly the achievements on the battlefront allow us that confidence. What will happen next? Very, very difficult to predict, but I think, Shell, I think we should pivot to another element, and that element is the focus that is back on trade. US and China ceasefire, a trade ceasefire, is a pretty big deal. We are seeing how the global markets are responding to that ever since this announcement was made, across the world in fact. And what does it mean? From very, very high three-digit tariffs, it's come down to 30 and 10%. And that 30 and 10% is far better an outcome than what was being imagined just maybe a week or 2 weeks back. Where does that leave India? Our efforts for a trade deal with the United States is the key broader macroeconomic objective that needs to be met and closed. We were earlier hopeful of a quick deal. The Indian side made all its proposals clear. We had heard from US authorities, including indications from President Trump and the Treasury Secretary, that a trade deal was pretty much near in finalization. But hours ago, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick seems to have suggested on a podcast with Bloomberg that it will take time. So I think that is also a very, very significant point that we need to ponder on, because the broader agenda of India is not to engage with Pakistan at its level and get into any kind of war. Frankly, we couldn't care less about Pakistan. It's a headache because of a twist of geography and fate and 1947. But Shell, look at this. The subcontinent was divided in 1947, two parts. Look at where one part is. Correct. And look at what the other part has become. And that other part is now globally known for being a jihad factory. It is known for its bankrupt, near bankrupt economy. It is known, even as their air bases were getting pounded, it is known for begging the IMF for money. And had that money not come, it possibly also blackmailed or arm twisted the US and other G7 countries which have a higher vote share in the IMF board to say, give us the money or we will ratchet up. And I'll finally close with one more point. Some of our viewers might have been seeing some social media chatter about radiation leak in Pakistan and all of that. You know, while the facts in that, as and when they emerge, we can debate about it. What is also very clear is that Pakistan has only one card left to scare the West with. It doesn't scare India, by the way. And that card is nuclear blackmail. We are going to, deploy our nukes if you don't get India to back off. Did that play out? Was that threat made? Some indications and comments seem to suggest that happened, but I'm going to caveat this by saying that we'll have to wait for a more authoritative on record kind of version to take that up. But for a country in 1947, which perhaps had a better economic per capita situation than India, look at what it has become. And I think Pakistan's crumbling economy, its failing institutions, the fact that it is a de facto military state run by generals and with whatever is left of the state run by feudal families, I think it's we really wouldn't, I mean, if we could wish them away, we would be completely fine. And it's clear for the government of India, for our states, for most people in India, economic growth, peace, stability, increase in income, increase in per capita, better education, better health, better houses, a more prosperous, more equal, more fair India is the ask. What is it in Pakistan? I leave that to the imagination of our viewers.
Siddharth, one final question on this issue before we lay it to rest is the Indus Water Treaty. I believe that the DGMOs of respective countries are supposed to speak at 5 p.m. To each other. Now, what of this treaty? The government has said from our side that it remains in abeyance.
Well, it's been made clear after the announcement of the ceasefire that as far as India's decision to keep the IWT, the Indus Water Treaty, in abeyance, that stays. The trade embargo on Pakistan stays. Not that there was much trade. After 2019, we had taken tariffs up to almost 200%.
Yes.
And there was very little trade. There was, of course, some transshipment that was happening through the Gulf route. Even that we have decided to completely put an end to. Minor leaks here or there, but trade with Pakistan is not going to happen anytime soon. Is cricket going to happen? Absolutely not. Are there going to be entertainment and industry kind of exchanges? None of that is going to happen. And our military strikes have just been paused. Pakistan has been put on notice that if you were to do anything, forget conventional military options, if you do proxy through jihadi groups, if you try and attack us anywhere in India, you will get paid back by India, which will treat it as an act of war. So, if you see the entire matrix, we have put Pakistan on notice like never before. And I think there will also be obviously a further upgrade of our defense capabilities. Any conflict teaches you about what you got right and where you have certain gaps that need to be filled. I imagine there will be more purchases, more orders in a new kind of warfare scenario that has evolved, which is drone based, non-fighter but aerial based warfare, loitering munitions, better air defense capability, better satellite mapping capability, better communication capability. That whole piece is going to get further upgraded, and that's why where we started this conversation from, you will see that also playing out in a positive manner on the markets. Viewers, I'm not suggesting that we profit from a war. That's not the point. The fact is that for us, the economic consequences are positive. For Pakistan, the Karachi Stock Exchange, the KSE 100, the Pakistan Stock Exchange that it was called, reflected the basket nature of its economy. So the differential between India and Pakistan is massive. From 1947 to 2025, with all the episodes that we have seen in between, India of today and the India of tomorrow practically doesn't need to bother about Pakistan, and that is why it continues to try and needle us, because it knows it is one of the pariah states in the world. It's got Afghanistan, which hates it. It's got Iran. It's only the client state of China, and I think in the future, the only thing that we need to watch out from a strategic defense and overall perspective, geopolitical perspective, is China continuing to and increasing the use of Pakistan as a proxy state. I think that's perhaps the biggest thing to be watched out for.
There is a lot of commentary now emerging that this war may have been fought between India and Pakistani militaries, but it was thought over, planned, and perhaps even funded by the Chinese as they see global chains moving towards India. Siddharth, this is the same template that we saw from 1996 onwards. Put in fear in the mind of global investors that Indian economy is unstable. And that as we will see 1 year down the line, by rising defense exports, rising outsourcing of electronic items, and of course rising FDI, will put paid to this nonsense as well. Thank you so much for your time, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you on air as also offline in the studios. Let's get back to the markets, ladies and gentlemen. As I had told in the early part of the show, right in the beginning, that you will have a trend day in which the Nifty will gap up and then proceed higher and higher, and it will close at its day's high. So Kunalji, 24,940 is where we are. My understanding is that 24,950 should be with us on this particular day. My request to you is any BTST, STBT trade that you have in your mind.
So again, those counters which we just discussed, the first is Adani Green. At this elevated level also, I think the breakout is still pending and it can be a good BTST trade. So with the stop of 930, one can initiate a buy and the targets can be 975. Might not be tomorrow, but in a day or two. Second counter, which is a mid-cap counter, JK paper, it is also looking good on the hourly chart. It is showing double bottom breakout. The risk reward ratio is extremely favorable. So with the stop of 315, one can initiate a buy and the targets can be 330. Third is Tata Motors. We discussed about this even the last week when you were mentioning about the earnings level, right? So I think this counter is also showing now the fresh breakouts with the stop of 705. one can initiate a buy, and the targets can be 740 to 745. Again, all these three counters can be positional rather than extremely BTST itself.
Absolutely. The reason why Kunal says that they are positional is because they are already, some of them have gapped up and some of them beyond the gap up have added more. So one has to again refigure your strategy in this kind of a gap up. I'll Kunal just take one more time moment to just mark volume in the market. Remember, today is a very high volume day, coupled with a 4% rise on the Nifty, 6.5% rise on the Bank Nifty, and 3.5% rise on the Nifty. So Bombay Stock Exchange is the top traded counter like yesterday, but today's volume is 2600 crores. Infosys has a volume of almost 1800 crores. The counter is up 7.7%. HDFC Bank has a volume of 1700 crores. Mazgaon, a volume of 6.5 crores, 1650 crores, my apologies. Reliance has a volume of 1500 crores, Tata Motors 1425 crores, ICICI Bank 1383 crores, and BEL 1200 crores. So what the reason why I tell you this is I am going to look at the FII purchase number today. Remember, it will be a purchase, be very clear. And today's purchase number on a net level should exceed 6,000 crores at least for us to have another up move tomorrow. In terms of strength, Kunal, what is the IT index now telling you? A 6.5% one day move is not something that ends in a day.
Absolutely, Shell sir. In fact, even after considering today's move, if you look at from the top, this index is still down by 17%. We
Yes.
saw the top somewhere near to December and there was 46,000. Today it's at 38,000. So I think this up move is now showing that clear higher top, higher bottom on even on the daily chart. And it is now surpassing those previous highs of March 2025, which were near 38,000, 37,800 to 38,000. So yeah, it's absolutely a clear buying signal. But again, on the stock specific, we'll have to be a little cautious, as you rightly mentioned. There are many counters which have gap up opened and rallied too
Yes.
much. So buy on dip can be, I think, good strategy on the entire sector now.
Okay. Instantly, the market has moved from a situation of fear, which was visible on Friday's close, to a situation of FOMO, fear of missing out. So look at the extreme. On Friday, people went short. The index closed at its day's low. On Monday, we have gapped up, and after a gap up, the size of the trend is 2x the gap up. So the gap up was 300 points and the trend is 2x. You added another 600 points. So ladies and gentlemen, now this rally has boots, it has strength, it has volume, and it has three major events backing it. India's comprehensive military victory, the US-China trade deal, and now it's the term for US-India trade deal to happen, as also the risk on trade which the US-China deal has introduced in the global markets. Wall Street is now, the futures are telling us that it's a very strong opening that Wall Street is expecting. Dow is trading 2.1, Dow futures are 2.2% higher, S&P 500 futures are 2.8% higher, Nasdaq futures, ladies and gentlemen, are 3.8% higher. A similar rally will happen tomorrow on IT, mark my words. And of course, the S&P 500 VIX is down 8.5%. So anything and everything that could go right today, ladies and gentlemen, has gone right, and this will only accelerate as the risk on trade becomes better and better. Remember, we've had a record high on the Nifty Bank and on the Fin Nifty. Now get ready for a record high on the Nifty as well in calendar 2025. I'll give the final word to you, Kunal.
Absolutely, sir. As you rightly mentioned, very bullish on Nifty. The first target is 25,500. And if that's crossed, then the previous high of 26,000 plus is very likely. And the trend is the only thing which we our viewers need to remember is stay with the trend. If the trend is really strong and positive, one should always think of initiating buys. Nifty support now, positional support is at 24,600. That can be kept in mind and the positions can be created accordingly.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll thank Kunal for his patience and the 3 or 4 stocks that he's mentioned on the long side, Infosys, J&K Paper, and of course his all-time favorite Mazgaon Dock. Thank you so much, Kunal. We hope
Thank
to
you so much.
speak more to you later in this week. Have a nice day, and what a wonderful evening this will be as far as participants on the Lal Street are concerned. A fabulous day.
Thank
Let
you so
me
much,
recount it for you. The Nifty gaps up 300 points, adds another 600, ends at its day's high, 24,928 for you. The Nifty Bank gaps up, adds 1800 points, 3.4% higher, and the Nifty IT, the star of the day, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the US-China deal, is 6.5% higher, 38,203. I tell you today that these rallies will continue tomorrow, because now a fresh risk on trade is there in the market. 3 major tailwinds. Number 1, the comprehensive victory that India scored over Pakistan in the military sphere. 2, the US-China trade deal. And 3, fresh buying by foreign institutional investors. Today's net buy should exceed 6,000 crores. With that, we'll call it a day, and please continue watching Business Today Television. The updates on the news on the other side of the break are equally important, as was the market today. Have a nice day.
Today, luxury